I'm Cody Roark, and the Denver Broncos are hitting their stride at the right time.
I'm Sayre Bedinger, and Bo Nix had a get-right game at the best possible time to take the lead in the AFC West.
I'm Nick Ferguson, and I know defense. And that MacGyver defense showed up again. Let's go.
You're going to get all that on today's Broncos Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Let's ride. It's the Broncos Squad. Everything Denver Broncos every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Mile High City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Gear up and squad up. The Broncos Squad Show starts now.
Broncos country, not sure what happened to the new intro. We'll have to get that figured out. We are not riding anymore, but you know what? We do have a Broncos Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network where you know it's your team every day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there in Broncos country for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast in the country. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports. We got a star-studded panel here on today's Broncos Squad Show. Sayre Bedinger, longtime site expert there, predominantlyorange.com, and you all know him. You love him. He delivers the hard hits on the microphone, and he did it on the field for many, many years. Former Broncos safety Nick Ferguson, and we got a lot to break down, gentlemen, here on today's Broncos Squad Show, brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel, where right now new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Chance, Denver, 9-2, sitting atop the AFC West. Sayre, let's start off with you, my friend. What did we learn from this Broncos team on Sunday?
Well, we learned that Bo Nix ain't dead. You know, we found out that he can still play. I guess, Cody, the eulogies were a bit premature, right? With Bo Nix out there in this game against the Kansas City Chiefs, the Broncos fan base wanted to see a bounce-back game from the quarterback. A lot of people didn't think it could happen. Some folks calling for Jarrett Stidham. Some folks got USA Today calling for John Mateer, the Oklahoma quarterback. Bo Nix played well when it mattered the most, right? And it wasn't just the fourth quarter. It was in the whole game against the Kansas City Chiefs, showing his leadership, showing his poise, showing his ability to respond to the pressure, which we know he talks about. Hey, I don't hear that stuff, or I kind of tune that stuff out. You could tell from the players in the locker room what they were saying, that they were hearing all that stuff. And it really felt like he responded in the best possible way at the best possible moment for this Denver Broncos team.
Nick, where are you at?
Well, I'm going to kind of put things in reverse for just a second because I'm going to talk about that first half of football. We saw the Broncos move the ball down the field with a certain fluidity that we hadn't seen all season long, only to do what we've seen them do all season long with sputter inside the red zone. But they were able to find their balance. They were able to find their rhythm, as I would like to say, their dancing shoes. I mean, at first, it looked like that they were going to have two left feet, but then they found their Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. So it was a thing of beauty to watch them go out there and move the ball down the field. And the biggest part for me, man, is that fourth quarter when they had to have it, those gotta-have-it moments. I think it was about 2 minutes and 59 seconds remaining in the game, and they moved the ball down the field. Once again, now, this is the thing that potentially makes this team dangerous because we're now starting to see more of an evolution in the offense. And dare I say, well, what can we expect from Sean Payton after the bye week? Because we just saw what he did after having 10 days off. So I'm excited. I don't know about you guys.
Well, and look, they were dealt with a massive blow this week with J.K. Dobbins' injury. We all found out, unfortunately, on Saturday that he has a Liz Frank injury. He's going to be out for the remainder of the season, though they said if Denver somehow makes it to the Super Bowl, JK might be good to go for that game. But, coming into this game, I mean, I think Denver knew. I mean, Nick, you know this as well as a former player, that inside the building, they're going to try to keep that under wraps as much as possible. We went out there all week long watching practice. I know I saw you at Thursday's practice. We're like, no JK. All right, well, this offense, which has been struggling, which has been sputtering, they're going to have to find a way to do it. And look, I would say the third quarter, towards the end there, that's really where things got going. And I think the Broncos offense overcame a lot. They didn't run the ball that well. Once again, 6 rushing attempts between Denver's backs in the first half for the third consecutive week in a row. We're not counting 2 rushes that Bo had there by design, trying to escape pressure. But for me, for them to overcome that against the Steve Spagnuolo defense, where they didn't really try to run as much in that first half. And then at times, especially in the third quarter, you get down there, Jaleel McLaughlin punches it in late in the game, fourth quarter, after you have a couple of pass plays to Cortland Sutton to move the chains. Now you're starting to get skinny on some short yardage distances, and you're picking up the first downs with RJ Harvey. That's great, but this run game certainly is going to have to get better here for the team going forward. Sayre, what did you see from the Broncos backs in the limited sample size, I would say, that we saw from them?
Well, I think in the first half, Cody, it was really a matter of the Broncos just didn't have enough plays to really stick to anything, right? I mean, they had the one drive that was going really well, and then Sean Payton tries the trick play, and I think we can effectively scrap the throws from Cortland Sutton and RJ Harvey. Let's be done with all that stuff. But it seemed like they were at least trying, right? And then they get the ball inside the 15 or inside the 10 or whatever it was, and it felt like they wanted to finish that drive with RJ Harvey, right? The first two plays of that drive went to Harvey. Bo Nix incomplete pass, red zone drive or red zone opportunity kind of squandered there. So that's kind of where I think that imbalance maybe comes from a little bit. You had a 2-minute drill at the end of half situation to try and get some points on the board. So I don't necessarily worry about the first half. I think what we saw situationally, though, from RJ Harvey was nice. Like, the big question about him is, can he win between the tackles, right? We haven't seen a ton of that. That was a question dating back to preseason. RJ Harvey did some nice work between the tackles when it mattered for the Broncos in this game. So hopefully you can build on that going forward and see that pass game option that he brings to the table a little bit more.
See, if we wanted to look at RJ Harvey and running between the tackles, I think all that goes back to the signal caller. I think that RJ Harvey, just like I thought Javonte Williams was capable of playing inside, running inside rather, and running outside, but you actually have to call the plays consistently and give those running backs an opportunity. And what I saw different today, guys, opposed to what we saw, seeing leading up to this particular game, was now I saw Sean Payton, probably because desperate times, they say, call for desperate measures. So he started opening up the formation. We have seen more open formations in this game than I've seen from the Broncos all season long. And I'll tell you this, here's the biggest takeaway from this game for me. Usually when the play calls were coming in for Sean Payton, you could just watch the play clock. There was like 20 or 15 seconds remaining on the play clock, which put a lot of stress on Bo. In this particular game, and I hope we see it moving forward, he gave Bo enough time to get on the center and process what he was seeing defensively. To me, I think that was the bigger issue as to why we saw Bo Nix perform better in today's game.
I'm glad you brought that up. And look, I'm going to give a shout out to Bo here because look, he looked like one of us, Nick, a defensive back on that RJ Harvey throw. That should have been big. He knocks it away. I mean, that was a clutch play, heads up moment there. But you are right. Like, Bo looked far more comfortable in obviously today's game. I think from a system standpoint, I think from a footwork and a mechanical standpoint. And in that first half, I mean, think about this too. There were a couple of key drops that negated some what would have been big time downfield throws from him in this game. But, let's talk about Troy Franklin here a little bit. Now, obviously, he's been getting a lot of attention for the last handful of weeks because defenses are bracket covering Cortland Sutton. So you need your young guys to step up. So when Troy's having a couple of drops, and look, I think this is the up and down nature of a young player. I also felt like it was a great reminder why you don't give up on players when they make mistakes. Because look, yes, Troy had a couple of bad drops in this game to start off, including one on third down. That was definitely big at a crucial juncture of this game. But then on third and 8, he comes up with a 35-yard catch down the left sideline. Late in the game, he comes up with a 30-plus yard catch to set up the Will Lutz game-winning field goal downfield, tracking it the way that he should. Want to get your guys' perspective here on the up and down nature of these young guys because, look, we saw Troy step up. We also saw Pat Bryant step up. And obviously late, we finally got to see Cortland Sutton make some plays.
It feels like there's such a limited level of patience with Troy Franklin amongst the fan base anyway, Cody, just because of the fact that, look, you want to see this offense get going. You want to see them have some level of consistency. You want to see Bo Nix get back on track. You want to see the team play complementary football. If you're guy that's getting 8 targets a game roughly lately, right? I mean, it's about there for Troy Franklin. He had 8 more targets in this game, 4 catches. look, if you're getting that amount of volume, you've got to capitalize on the opportunity. And when you're not doing it, people don't necessarily have that same patience for a young player that you might have if the team was struggling, or if you're breaking in a lot of, you know, a young quarterback, whatever the case may be. There's just a different level of intensity to every mistake that every player is making when the stakes are as high as they are. So I think that's the tension with Troy Franklin, is we see the best of what he brings to the table. The dude is fast. He's got playmaking ability, and he has that star potential that I think the Broncos were willing to pass on guys at the trade deadline. It's just we want to see that capitalized on a bit more frequently, and it's hard to wait, I guess, for that higher frequency rate.
Yeah, and it's being patient is something that I don't believe Broncos country, many in Broncos country, have time for, because I as a former player, I totally understand it. Just think about the drought years that we've seen after Peyton Manning called it a career. And even though you can toss in the Tebow situation to Demaryius Thomas, we still haven't seen it in a higher clip. So I can understand fans being impatient and wanting Troy Franklin to make those catches, because there were 2 catches today, man. It looked like he had frying pans for hands, because I was wondering, okay, is he doing a great job tracking the ball into his hands? And I'll tell you, some of the tougher catches to make is when someone is in phase with you. But there were a couple of catches that I felt, with him being a professional, he should have had better hand placement. And that's kind of his issue, where he's placing his hands when the balls are coming up opposed to the balls going down. And if they fix that with Troy Franklin, he's already showing that he can be one hell of addition to that wide receiver room.
So there's Troy, and let's talk about rookie Pat Bryant, who as of late has really kind of come into his own. There's been times this year, look, the beginning of the season, the first half, I would say Pat Bryant has been the construction worker, the guy that has the hard hat, the lunch pail, does the dirty work, clocks in, and you know what, doesn't complain, loves his role. The last handful of weeks, we've seen him getting more involved in the passing game, and it's been fun to watch. Obviously, in this game, 5 catches, 82 yards, including a really big catch and run of obviously 48 yards where he got pulled down. He's good. Talked to him after the game in the locker room. They're getting contributions from him, but you know who I want to see more contributions from? And it's not his fault. It's the play callers. Why isn't Marvin Mims being used more in the passing game? Gentlemen, I want your thoughts on this.
It's a tale as old as time, isn't it? I mean, how many times have you and I talked about this? It's like, figure out a way to get the guy who's maybe the best on the team in space with the ball in his hands out of anybody. He's got game-breaking speed. We've seen the clutch plays even from Marvin Mims. Figure out a way to get this guy touches. I know that they want to get him the swing passes out of the backfield. They want to run him in motion. They want to disguise what they're doing with him and let him be the threat to the defense. But in order for him to be a true threat, you might have to send him on some of these deep balls and get him the ball. I mean, it's just a matter of doing it at this point, isn't it, guys? I mean, that's kind of where my frustration is that with Marvin, it feels like we talk about, well, they're saving plays for him, or they've got a package that they don't want to unveil until late in the game, or whatever it is. It's just, that's another frustrating aspect, even amidst the winning, is, man, you want to see everybody's potential maximized. And it feels like Marvin is kind of having his wings clipped a little bit in the offense.
Well, I'm going to tell you guys, be careful what you ask for, because Sean Payton would definitely give it to you. And that was kind of the idea. Well, we got to get Marvin Mims touches. And that's why we saw Marvin Mims on those jet sweeps, those orbit sweeps, throwing it to him parallel to the line of scrimmage, and even handed it to him in the backfield, because Sean had that same mentality. It's about touches. And I'll say, well, maybe we should change the word, not from touches, but more or less targets, because when I think targets, now we're talking about vertical routes up the field. And Marvin showed what he can do last year in that Cincinnati Bengals game, but he showed today in his return. He was able to flip the field. And I would have to say this, and this whole time Marvin Mims has not been in the game due to his injury, no one has really been talking about Marvin Mims. Obviously, Bo Nix, the offense struggles, Sean Payton. And I say the one ingredient that was missing, and we saw it today, was Marvin Mims on special teams. He's having another Pro Bowl type of season, but if you give him that same type of targets going vertically, man, that dude will reward you for sure.
Well, and on top of that, too, his threat, just because of his speed, look, he's got great tracking ability. We see it in the return game. We've seen it downfield on crazy high arcing throws from Bo Nix to him. The idea is if defenses start to worry a little more about Marvin on those downfield routes, okay, now you're going to open up some one-on-ones for Troy, for Pat Bryant, Evan Ingram, or even Cortland Sutton, because you have to dedicate your attention to the most dangerous guy downfield. And look, we know how defenses play today. Too high shell, predicated on taking away the deep stuff. But with all the underneath stuff that the Broncos run from a route scheming standpoint from Sean Payton, you can set some things up and you can tell as the game is going about. I mean, Nick, every time they get close splits down from like the 40 and they're working their way from the 40 in, I'm like, that post wheel's coming here eventually. And you see it. It's setting up. They haven't been able to hit it just yet. I imagine they will here soon. We still have a lot to talk about here on today's Broncos Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Coming up next, Sayre, Nick, and I, we're going to talk what at least Nick and I really love, defense. Sayre loves defense too, but we're defensive players at heart, defensive coaches. We're going to dial it into what Vance Joseph and is what Nick calls the MacGyver defense, how they came up big here on today's Squad Show. Today's Broncos Squad Show is brought to you by our friends over there at Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. And I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. And you should too, because Mint, they make it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and your contacts. The setup for it is super easy. You keep your number and then you're running in minutes. If you're ready to say yes to saying no, make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. We're back here on the Broncos Squad Show, breaking down the Broncos' big-time win against the Kansas City Chiefs to go to 9-2. And Kansas City, they're now sinking down towards the bottom there. The Raiders might try to creep up against them. That would be a funny turn of events here in the 2025 NFL season. But the Broncos, they have some cushion. And you know what's been a big story for them all season long? It has been that dominant defense led by Vance Joseph. We've talked so much all year, I think, in the media of Bo Nix, the Broncos offense, the offensive struggles. And at times, I feel like we sometimes ignore just how great of a job Vance Joseph has done with this defense here. Sayre, what's one of your biggest takeaways you got from the Broncos' victory here today from the defensive side of the ball?
I might be buying a Jaquan McMillian jersey, Cody, and hanging it up behind me because that dude was doing everything, right? We called it the Jaquan McMillian legacy game. I love it. I absolutely can't get enough of just the way that he makes plays for this team in big moments, so many different ways, right? Whether he's blitzing, whether he's making a play, busting up a screen, or he's busting up a run play, picking off Patrick Mahomes in a ball don't lie situation. You absolutely love to see it. I mean, he's been so clutch for this team in big games. And so I think Jaquan McMillian is an example of what Vance Joseph has done maybe better than most defensive coordinators in the NFL, and that's developing all sorts of talent for, undrafted guys, top picks, day 2 picks, day 3 picks. It don't matter. These guys who can play are playing extremely well in his defense, and McMillian is just a great example of we all thought it was over for him when Jahdae Barron was drafted and he's going to get ousted as the slot guy, or maybe he's trade bait at the deadline to get an offensive weapon or something like that. But man, having him on the team right now, how glad is everybody that 29 was out there on Sunday?
Sayre, I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the biggest things this offseason in training camp when Jahdae was drafted. Everyone was kind of putting, Jaquan on the back burner. And I remember going to training camp and I saw him and I just pulled him to the side. I said, man, let me holler at you for a second. Everyone is thinking that you are done, that you're going to just kind of tuck your bag, grab your ball and go home because they drafted some guy in the first round. And I said, I know that you're bigger than that. And I know you play much larger than that. So everyone else is going to be surprised what you're going to do this season. And we're seeing the fruits of his labor. And this dude is a competitor. And I knew because I mean, just knowing guys who've been in this situation, I've been in this situation before, that when everyone seems to be against you, only you have to believe in you. And he's done that really well. And watching him go out and play. And the best thing for me, not just the sacks, not just the fact that he got the interception, but the ability to tackle in space. That is a lost art. It is very difficult to do, and you have to strain and make sure that you put yourself in position. And Vance Joseph, man, he's got a hell of a defense. And I told Cody this before, and you'll get a chance to hear it for the first time. I am jealous of this defense. I am jealous that I didn't play in a defense that was like this. Not to say that the guys I played with were not great guys, but when you look at their defense collectively, it is something that we haven't seen around here before. And I'll also add this really quickly. My former Broncos teammate, DJ Williams, was at the game today, and we were sitting right next to one another watching the game, and he was seeing it himself, and he's asking questions like, who's that, and why is this guy doing that? And I was like, you know what? These guys have bought into the defense, and Vance talked about it on Thursday. You have an unselfish group of guys willing to play for one another, and I can tell you guys, that makes this defense more dangerous than we've seen thus far this season.
Well, Nick, you played on some good defenses, man. That 05 defense, that 06 defense, you know, those were some tough guys. It's crazy to imagine.
Wait, we didn't have the pass rush like they had. Come on, man.
Could you imagine if you guys did have that? Oh, my good. And in an era where you could actually hit people and play defense.
Yes.
We'll talk a little bit about like the defense and physicality in today's game. Riley Moss, defense pass first. We're going to talk about all that here today, Broncos country, as we continue on here. I love everything that you guys said about J-Mac here, because this is a guy who, if you look at the screensaver on his phone, it's kind of a goal. He wants to be a Pro Bowl cornerback, right? That's always a goal. And now, like in today's world, it's like the Pro Bowl is just such a fan voting thing. It doesn't mean what it used to. But J-Mac is such an underrated player. I feel like he's one of the best slot nickels right now in the NFL for those things that you mentioned. Not only does he have the coverage ability, the big play ability, and we've seen this since he stepped on the field in that one Week 18 game where he had to play outside corner, and he's going up against Mike Williams, who was prime Mike Williams at that time, and he's getting passes broken up. He's picking off passes that are there. You saw the ball hawking ability from number 29. He came up big here today. 2 sacks and an interception here in this game. And I tell you what, as fast as he was running, Tyquan Thornton, shout out to him. That dude was tracking him down from the backside. Sean Payton took a shot from the ref. JFM gave Patrick Mahomes a little shot. It was just one of those plays here. But like you needed one of those plays. J-Mac is going to deliver. And I think the other impressive thing, gents, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this as we continue to talk today, how they've been able to manage without Pat Surtain. Sayre, your thoughts on Denver managing that, and then Nick, what you've seen from this unit as well.
Man, it's pretty remarkable, honestly. I mean, Chris Abrams-Drain made a couple of plays today that you kind of just watch and you see that dude's a starter. I mean, there's no question about it. Jade had a pick 6 wiped off the board that should have never been. I mean, it's kind of wild to think that Riley Moss, I don't know if he still has this stat, Cody, but the lowest completion percentage per target or whatever it might be. I mean, the fact that he's the guy who seems to be struggling the most out there is pretty remarkable when you consider all things. And I think it just goes back to Vance Joseph once again. I mean, the secondary is kind of that prime example of the undrafted, the first round picks, the second round, third round, day 3. It doesn't matter. He's getting the most out of all these guys, and they're all being put in great positions to succeed. I love how Jade's being used as kind of the tight end stopper. I know, Travis got him a couple of times in this game, but there's creative ways that everybody's being deployed out there, to Nick's point, and that's been exciting. Player development, creative usage of each player, and it's building their confidence. What does Sean Payton always say? That confidence is born from demonstrated ability or whatever it is. These guys are out there doing it. And so, yeah, they're drinking the Kool-Aid, right?
Take a drink every time you hear Sean Payton say that. It's a fun game.
Well, here's what I would say. I mean, the team is at this particular point because every single year they get these young guys, and these young guys play well enough where they're giving them time. You talk about Chris Abrams-Drain. Even though he wasn't a starter last year, he played in spurts. And even the issues that he had last year, he learned from those things, and he took them into training camp. He became better. So now you thrust him in a lineup opposite of Riley Moss with no PS2. He has no choice because it's baptism by fire. And just think about it. If you're Jahdae Barron, even if you drafted in the first round, you have a lot of expectations because of secondary and the defense that you're part of, and then you're asked. And in a big game that means a lot for you and, the Kansas City Chiefs, we need you to cover Travis Kelce. We know he has a great connection with Patrick Mahomes, and he's going to get open. He's going to beat you sometime. But we need you to hold in there and to watch these guys not flinch, not panic. Even Riley Moss, and we'll get to it later, but to watch them not flinch, that is what you need. And I would be remiss if I did not mention this guy and his staff, because once again, we talk about Vance because a lot of people don't, but so many people talk about Bo and Sean. No one talks about George Payton and his staff, because when you think about Vance, he wouldn't have any of these guys if he could go into George's office and said, I need a Zach Allen. I need a Jahdae Barron. I need a Riley Moss, right? If he can't go in and ask for those types of guys, we don't see what we're seeing thus far.
Selfishly, we were talking about this in the postgame, Nick. Vance Joseph is going to be a hot name for a head coaching job in this offseason cycle.
For sure.
Selfishly, I don't want him to get one. I want him to stay as the D coordinator here in Denver. But you talk about a man who's deserving of it after everything. 110%. Vance certainly is. Your thoughts on that real quick. Do we think here, let's go rapid fire. Sayre, we'll go with you, and then Nick. Do we think Vance Joseph leaves Denver for a head coaching job this offseason, or do you think he stays on as a DC?
I think he's going to be the most coveted, non-former head coach. I do. I really believe that. I think that he's gaining so much respect after the 70-point debacle against the Dolphins, the way that this unit has bounced back, the way that players are developing. I think he got a really raw deal his first time around. I think he's going to be the most coveted coordinator, head coach candidate this offseason.
I'm going to say, yeah, man, he's out of here. The moment someone is serious about signing him as being the next head coach, yeah. Now, we know we've seen this before, and so many minority coaches go in the cycle, and they just get interviews to pass the Rooney Rule. But I think this will be the year that he finally gets his opportunity. And to what you said, Sayre, when you look at Vance's first opportunity to be a head coach here, I can tell you with most certainty it wasn't the best setup for him. Now, in the second time around, he's wiser. He's not going to make the same mistakes. And here's the most important part that determines whether a coach is successful or not. The team that you're going to, does the ownership and the GM share your same vision? If they don't share your same vision, it's going to be the same thing all over again. But if he goes to a team, they really want him, and he's like, hey, Bill Parcells, if you want me to cook the food, you got to allow me to buy the damn grocery.
Yeah, no. And here's the thing I'll even throw out too. I think one of the biggest things about this dynamic is exactly what you said when you talk about ownership, GM stability. If you don't have a place that has that, it's simply not going to work. Now I look at the New York Giants. I don't know how I feel about the New York Giants for a place like Vance. I don't know how I feel about a place like the Miami Dolphins. If that vacancy, if that ends up becoming a vacancy at some point, do you want to go to Tennessee if you're a young, if you're a head coach and you got all these, yes, you got Jeffrey Simmons, but you got other pieces. It's just like what's going on with L'Jarius Sneed. That's a whole nother subject. I just think that the situation for Vance, and I'm sure he's probably wise enough to do this, I don't think Vance will take a head coaching job just to get one. I think he'll make that decision if it's best for him, if he knows he's going to a place where he's going to have time to build things the right way. And he could end up taking some Broncos coaching staff members with him defensively and maybe even the offensive side of the ball there with Davis Webb. Let's hope that is not the case here. As the Broncos right now are sitting in a good spot, 9-2 atop of the AFC West, the defense has come up big, especially on third down. And Jaquan McMillian's sack on third down in this game was big for the Broncos. But let's give a little bit of a nod here real quick to special teams. Gents, what did you see? Give me rapid fire. Sayre, give me one thing from special teams. Nick, give me one thing you saw from special teams here on Sunday.
We talked about Marvin Mims already. How about Devin Key? I mean, every time there was kickoff coverage, I feel like 26 was popping into the frame, and it's hard to stand out on kickoff coverage unless you are making those pop types of plays, right? But Devin Key has been doing that. He's been doing it all season long. I feel like he deserves a big shout out. Obviously, your kicker making some clutch kicks, but I think Devin Key is my guy from this game, Cody, big time in terms of creating long fields for the Kansas City offense.
I'm going to stick with my main man, Marvin Mims, because the vision, the smoothness to actually get out of crevices where you see that it seemed like things are so crowded, and to find daylight. He knows what he needs to do when he finds daylight. And once again, I mean, when you look at the Broncos' struggles offensively, when Marvin Mims wasn't in the lineup, you may not say, well, it was because of how he was not being used offensively as a wide receiver, but he flipped the field on punt returns and kickoffs, and that's what the Broncos missed, field position.
Yeah, and they took advantage. Look, there was one you hope they would have came over with the touchdown instead of 3 points when Marvin had the 70-yarder there. I'm going to give a little shout-out to Jeremy Crawshaw. You don't like to punt ever, but there was one punt in this game. It almost got blocked, but he boomed it to pin the Chiefs back as deep as they could. 58-yarder right there to pin them inside the 20-yard line. That was a big play there for the Broncos at a crucial juncture in that fourth quarter here. But Broncos country, coming up next, we're going to hear a little bit from some of the players inside the locker room, and we're going to have a discussion about Broncos cornerback Riley Moss, who changed his approach this offseason, but is it hurting him in the regular season? We'll discuss all that here on today's Broncos Squad Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's Broncos Squad Show is brought to you by friends over there at FanDuel. And as you all know, FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. The NBA season is happening right now. The NFL season is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Now, for the basketball court, for NBA games, even if you missed the start of the game and you missed the opening tip, well, you can ride the hot hand in the fourth quarter inside of FanDuel because they have live bets on everything from who will score the next bucket to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. And on top of that, you got the NFL season where Week 11 might have been one of the best weeks this football season. And FanDuel certainly was an exciting place to be, especially for that Broncos and that Chiefs matchup where the Broncos coming into it were 3.5-point home underdogs. If you took the Broncos on the money line, guess what? You're a happy camper here because right now, new customers at FanDuel, they're giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Well, inside of a locker room after a victory, I don't know if you guys had a chance. We all have social media. Nick Bonito went live. He posted on his Instagram story. We got a little bit of a glimpse inside Club Dub. And there's no group, I feel like, that's more hyped up after a win than the Broncos. Club Dub, the speakers, the smoke coming out of the tunnel from the locker room, from the smoke machine that they have in there. Nothing's quite like it. And nothing is quite like the Broncos being the #1 team right now in the AFC, atop, right ahead there, tied the same record with New England, but the conference record gives the Broncos the advantage there. Thank you once again to everybody in Broncos country, all the everydayers out there. Thanks for making us your first listen. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the country. Let's go through some sights and sounds inside the locker room. I had a chance to go in the locker room after the game. The vibes were at an all-time high. Of course, a huge game. Where coming into this matchup, it was billed as the biggest game for the Broncos since that AFC Championship matchup against Tom Brady and Peyton Manning for the final time before the Sheriff rode off into the sunset. We talked a lot earlier about Bo Nix and a lot of the stuff that was being said about him over the course of the last few weeks. I can't play what Adam Troutman said, but Adam Troutman had the greatest clip of all time. It's on Twitter. You can check it out. But basically, he said, we don't care what the basement dwellers on Twitter have to say about Bo Nix. They stink. We know how Bo brings to the table. I love that. But we also caught up with Broncos offensive guard Quinn Miners after the game. Here's what he had to say about Bo Nix, and you're going to hear from Sayre and from Nick.
I mean, everyone's quick to criticize. Everyone wants their headlines and their whatever. The outside world might be flinching or whatever with Bo, but this team and our offense, we don't flinch. We know exactly what he's capable of. We know what we need to be around for him so he can be successful. And we have the utmost belief in him. And, he knows that, and that's all that really matters is us in this building know that, we have his back, and he knows that.
I'm sad that it was only Troutman, Cody, who called out. I think it was Dragon Slayer. I think that was who he was calling out there. So I guess that needs to start circulating in the locker room, whoever Dragon Slayer is. But yeah, I think
acronym bros on Twitter.
The acronym bros, absolutely, all of them. Yeah, they're all Dragon Slayer, and then a number after that. That's their username. But I think, look, when you talk about the locker room and the perception of what people are saying, like, this is the disconnect that you and I see on a daily basis. It's the frustration. It's the tension between what certain people think about Bo Nix and what other people see in Bo Nix. And it's not just like what you see from him every single week. It's what you see in him, right? You're buying a person as much as a player when it comes to the quarterback position in the NFL, and your belief in that player. Like you and I talked about it, how streaky baseball pitchers can be at times. The best pitchers in baseball get chased from games. Like Bo Nix, just because of the nature of the NFL, every single week has such high stakes. You don't get afforded the same level of grace like we talked about with Troy Franklin, right? So you don't get that same grace, and the locker room just doesn't think that way, right? And they're winning games. Like they've won 8 straight games. You got to buy an annual membership to Club Dub at this point. So I think right now that locker room is the strength around Bo Nix, and you could tell that he felt that from them by the way that he played.
Yeah, it's basically one of those things. Hold on for a second, guys. I'm getting the message here. There's some guys who are not going to be allowed into Club Dub. I just wanted to put that out there right now. And basically what was happening is we're starting to see an evolution with Bo. And from a professional standpoint, I would still say there's certain things about Bo's game that he needs to clean up. But here, if I could speak directly to Sean Payton, if you will, allow Bo to be himself. It's only when someone tries to paint us into somewhat of a kind of plastic box that now you become a mime. You're not yourself. And when I would listen to all the national critics talk about Bo, and they say, well, he looks hesitant. You know why? Because he has an innate thing where he wants to operate his body in a certain way, the way that he's done all his life, but his coach wants him to play the game in a certain way. Now, I mean, as a coach, you want to tell your players, go out there and do what you do. Use your God-given ability. The moment you don't do what you're supposed to do, now you have to do it my way. If Sean Payton takes that type of approach, and all you have to do is look at those fourth quarter comebacks, look at the fourth quarter comeback today with 2 minutes and 59 seconds to go in the game. As the plays started to come out fast, we saw the fast processor, all of which that Sean Payton sold us on Bo to start in this pre-draft process. We're now seeing that come to fruition. And Sean, stop playing with the dude with white gloves on. Take the kid gloves off. Let him go out there and be himself. He's going to make some mistakes, but I bet you he's going to make you more right than he's going to make you wrong.
And Tracy Wolfson had a great point. There was one juncture, I don't know if this was before half or if this was in the third quarter, but she said that Bo Nix was almost like begging Sean, like, hey, let's up the tempo because let's go fast. Like that is huge. And you've seen a comfort level from Bo in that situation. But I mean, I love how the locker room offense and defense rallies behind Bo. There was a report that was put out this week. I know ESPN's Jeremy Fowler came to town last week, and somebody had run with it and said that Jeremy had said something along the lines that, the defense is losing confidence in Bo Nix. And I can say, even though Bo was going through a slump, talking to defensive guys, that was not true. And it's crazy how untrue things can circulate and get spread, and then people believe it. I mean, we see it with all this Facebook AI stuff in today's world. It sends me for a loop here. But what I think also sends Broncos country into a loop, and I think this is an important thing to talk about, Riley Moss. I love Riley Moss. I'm one of the biggest Riley Moss defenders. I think Riley plays the position. It's very, very tough. He's in a tough spot, being opposite of PS2. And of course, he's seeing a lot of volume, a lot of targets, and he's been called for a lot of defensive pass interferences, including a few ones here, obviously, in Sunday's game. I feel like there were maybe, the illegal contact that negated a pick six was a little ticky-tacky, but the PI calls are becoming a trend, and even Riley himself after the game talked about it. We'll get Sayre's reaction and Nick's after we hear from Riley.
Some gloves on me. We're going to tape them up. So there's no chance of it's a repetitive thing, and people can have their opinion on it, but you know, me as a professional athlete, I need to be able to realize, okay, this has happened multiple times. And yeah, it's unfair sometimes and it sucks, but you know, I can't be in that position, you know, as much as I have been, and so that's something to work on. And you know, again, like everyone has their opinion, but you know, as a competitor and as an athlete, you know, I got to own up to some of it and you know, get better from it.
I love that guy, man. That's hilarious. Yeah, get the gloves on. And I can't, that pick 6 from Riley Moss at some point is just going to absolutely hit. You know what I'm saying? Like, the guy deserves it more than anyone right now. He's going to have such an easy.
Careful, there's a flag.
Careful, there's a flag. Yeah, there's a flag on
at
the
least
play.
this crew against Kansas City. Ugh.
This was rough. I mean, what did he have? Over 90 yards of penalties on his own. I mean, I can only imagine how frustrated he is. You're a professional athlete, like you said. You make a great play, and you're just immediately looking around, like, okay, did I do anything wrong this time? You know, it's like, it's just brutal for him. I feel bad for him, and yeah, you get frustrated watching it because at some point something does have to change, but I don't know exactly what he can do. I mean, some of these plays, like you mentioned, Cody, they're ticky-tack things that are happening in the 3rd and 19. You give up a deep ball downfield. I mean, that's just tough, right? And so I don't know exactly, and Nick can speak to this better than I can. I as an Iowa guy, I struggle with this. Iowa took an L this weekend, Cody. Riley's getting burned for 90-plus yards of penalties. Like, what the heck is going on right now for my Hawkeyes? I need Riley to have the bounce back that the Hawkeyes certainly aren't getting on the field anytime soon.
Well, I can personally tell you, I know exactly what Riley's going through. One game, it was a Monday night game against this very Kansas City team. I had 60 yards in penalties by myself. So I know how that feels. And every time there's laundry on the field, even when it's further away from you, you're looking like, what did I do now? And when I look at Riley, and his biggest issue is sometimes it's losing at the line of scrimmage versus the speed release. You get upfield, you start to panic. And I can tell you because I have a couple of friends who are officials in the NFL. They're always looking when you in press coverage, what you do at the top of the route. And what's happening with Riley, it is becoming habitual now where he panics. He's even talked about panicking at the top of the route and grabbing. And I think it was Xavier Worthy where the ball was underthrown. He was in phase. He was on top of the route, but since it was an underthrown ball, he was trying to get himself back into position. So he's trying to slow himself down, and he grabs the receiver on his way. And it was interesting because Riley talked about the idea of putting on boxing gloves. And I have to tell you, I've seen this movie before when one of my teammates, sort of like Riley, was kind of grabby at the top of routes, where our DB coach put gloves on him, and he became Sebastian from Little Mermaid. That's what some of the guys started to call him. So when you ask, well, what can you do to help Riley? That is one of those things, and there's a specific drill that can help him at the top of the routes. The Broncos can hire me for that. I'm not going to give that one for free. But, yeah, it's Sebastian life for Riley Moss right now.
Yeah, and look, here's the thing. Cornerback is so hard. And it's like, I feel like Riley's style of play, Nick, if he was on that 2005 defense with you and Champ Bailey, he could have played like that. They would have let guys do that. You know, and the fact that he acknowledged it, look, I think we can all sit here objectively and say some of the flags that are thrown on Riley this season, they have been kind of ticky-tack suspect, like, I don't know. And then there are times where there is a clear, like, he'll grab at the last minute. And look, you can't do that. What I have the problem with is, for example, on the first one that got called deep down the right sideline, the side judge who is right there, who's watching the play closer than anybody else, is watching it. He signals incomplete on it, but it's the guy in the back of the end zone towards the middle of the field is the one that throws the flag. That's where I have the issue with it, just the level of inconsistency. But then here's we talk about trends specifically in this game. Okay, they're calling Riley for these holdings, defensive pass interference. Okay, I get that. What about the couple attempts downfield to Troy Franklin where Watson got away with the hold? What about that third down? It was like 3rd and 8 where Trent McDuffie holds Cortland Sutton blatantly, and they don't call it. Like, to me, it's just, if you're going to call it one-sided. Adrian Hill, the official in this game coming into it, I highlighted it. I put it out there on the Twitter sphere. The home team has won 22% of the games that he's called so far this year. And there was such an indiscrepancy. And look, there were a lot of penalties on Kansas City. There were a lot of penalties on the Broncos in this game. Fans don't want to tune in to see that. But at least if you're going to call it one way, call it that way on the other side. That's my one gripe right there. But I'm also glad that Riley admitted, hey, I got to work on something. Because in the offseason, he put on muscle. And what was the biggest reason? He told us in the offseason. So he could play more physical, because you have that game against T. Higgins. He says, the guys are pushing off. I want to be able to match that. His offseason preparation might be the one thing that has kind of hurt him a little bit in this situation.
It's really interesting because he at Iowa, he was ball skills for days. I mean, it was like the ball could not find any other place other than his waiting arms and his hands to make the play. And now at the NFL level, making those plays on the ball has eluded him, to yours and Nick's point. And so that's what I'm just waiting for that moment to just click for him, where he finds that again. I don't know if that's even possible to do, but I feel like it has to be, because that's just the type of player that he is. He's a ball hawk out there. He always has been. And so it's frustrating from that vantage point. But then they talked about it during the game. He's been called for 9 pass interference penalties this season. No other corner in the NFL has been called for more than 5. That's a little ridiculous to me. And I just think that, yeah, this was the first time anybody has won against the Chiefs with this guy calling the penalties. I mean, it's just a crazy ordeal. You don't want to sit here and blame the refs for stuff. You don't ever want to have to come back to that at the end of a game, but I used to box people out really physically in basketball when I played, Cody, obviously rec league stuff, really, really high quality basketball. And I'd get there a little early, right? I'd be like, hey, I'm going to box this guy out right after he takes a shot, because to me that was legal. But I kept getting called for fouls, and I'm like, well, I'm just boxing him out, right? But the ref was calling all these fouls, and so I had to change what I did. And obviously Riley Moss has to do the equivalent for what he's getting called for right now and make that adjustment.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you talk about Riley Moss and how he played when he was at Iowa, and the difference is, okay, the route running on the league level is entirely different. But here's the biggest thing, and we saw it today. It's ball placement. That's the thing that changes once you go from the collegiate level to the pro level. Ball placement for quarterbacks. And you saw how the game started out. I mean, the ball placement wasn't exactly where Patrick Mahomes wanted it to be, but I told you guys, Cody, it was going to be at least 4 shots down the field, and that's exactly what the Kansas City Chiefs attempted to do without fail. But that's the issue for Riley right now, to understand that there is a resume out there already, and you stacking it every single day. And if I am an offensive coordinator or a wide receiver, I'm going over to, hey, Mr. Official, watch 21. On those upfield routes, he likes to grab. And I'm going to warn them every single time. And fair or not, this is the life of, Riley Moss until he changes it. But you have to think, if I'm playing against the Denver Broncos, that is going to be my approach. Throw at him, but also get the officials on my side as well.
Yeah, Sean Payton's going to have to butter up the officials, say, hey, I know he's getting called here. And look, Riley's going to have conversations with the refs too about being able to play. I feel like this offseason, there's going to be a nice little film seminar on defensive pass interference, holding, illegal contact, all that fun jazz here. But look, yes, it's something that Riley certainly has to adjust. He can still play at a high level. Look, I think people look at those negative plays, and I've gotten nothing but messages, because I've been a huge Riley Moss defender. They're like, oh yeah, how are you going to defend Moss this time? They're like, cut Moss. Like, the fact that you're saying cut Moss, even though that he's getting called for PS, he's still making plays. He's coming up, making big time tackles, and there's times where he's coming up with big pass breakups. Welcome to the life of a cornerback, baby. I played it. I love the pressure. Me and Riley Moss, we got something in common. White cornerbacks that excelled at the game. We love it. But you know what else we love too? Whenever there's a victory, we're going to hand out our game balls. Sayre, Nick, and myself, we're going to throw out game balls here from Sunday's big time win by the Broncos here on today's Broncos Squad Show. It is the holiday season, folks, and Sayre, Nick, and we're going to hand out our game balls. We're being a little charitable here today. Anytime there's a victory, I always feel like, Nick, and you've been in a locker room too, at the end, coach is like, we'll hand out game balls. They'll say, hey, this guy, 200 yards rushing on the ground, he gets the game ball. feel like we should just do something here where we hand out each a game ball. We'll start on offense. We'll each identify a guy. We'll identify a guy on defense. And we'll talk about maybe somebody on special teams as well here. So, Sayre, I'm going to have you kickstart us here. Give us your offensive side of the ball. Give us somebody you feel like handing a game ball out to for the Broncos 22-19 victory here today.
I like Pat Bryant for a game ball, Cody. I do. I think that he, has seen the uptick in the targets in recent weeks. And I kind of feel like he's maybe a bit of a deep cut because he didn't necessarily make the biggest clutch play in this game, but shoot, that 48-yard catch and run was really nice. Had a couple of other first down conversions in this game. And when you needed somebody to be making plays in the passing game, especially that first drive, right? I mean, Pat Bryant was coming through. So you need your rookies to step up as the season progresses. We know that these guys have played a decent amount of snaps up to this point, but shoot, that passing game isn't going to get going if the receivers aren't catching their targets. And he caught 5 of his 6 targets in this game, including the big play. So I'm going to give one to Pat Bryant in this game.
Well, not to pull off my Scooby-Doo mask, I'm definitely going to go with a defense because it was so obvious, right? And I'm going to go in a different direction because obviously everyone on the defense deserves game ball, but there was a guy who didn't really kind of jump out on the stat sheet, and that was Talanoa Hufanga because there were no interceptions, even though he had an opportunity off a deflected pass to kind of get one, but he was the bona fide eraser. They used him at the line of scrimmage to take away some of those large runs from Kareem Hunt. But he also did a good job in the intermediate passing game, kind of deflected some passes and keeping the Chiefs from having those explosive plays. He's flying under the radar in this particular game, but my guy would be Talanoa Hufanga.
I talked to Hufanga after the game, and we were talking about the Travis Kelce touchdown, and he says, on that one, I over pursued it. He says he's so good at stopping on a dime. He said, but I just remember touching him. The dude was sweating like you wouldn't believe. Just like he's like, I slipped essentially a few times when trying to tackle him. I slipped off of him. So Taylor's husband's got to get that under wraps here. I like that pick here, Nick. I do. For me on the offensive side of the ball, I think there was a lot of great cases to be made here. Troy Franklin coming up with that clutch catch late, I think is worthy of that. Cortland Sutton, 3rd and 15, he gets 20. 3rd and 8, he gets 8.5. That gives the Broncos the first down by just a little bit of an inch in the fourth quarter. He makes a great case. I'm going to give one to the quarterback. I'm going to give one to Bo Nix. Even though he didn't have a touchdown on the day, the way he commanded the offense, the way he set things up, the ball was where it needed to be on a majority of his throws. Once again, willing this team to a victory. His 8th career in 28 games, 8th career comeback game-winning drive. I'm going to give Bo Nix one in this game. Let's shift to defense as well. I know you got Talanoa Hufanga, Nick, as your defensive player. Sayre, if you have to identify someone, I'm sure you're probably going to steal the one that I think of. But you know what? The floor is yours, my friend. Who are you giving one to?
I've been trying to think of another deeper cut here because, we gave Jaquan McMillian the flowers here. There's so many defensive players I think you could pick from this game, right? But Jaquan McMillian is that dude from this game, right? He obviously made the 2 sacks on Patrick Mahomes, had the interception, and like Nick was saying earlier, really did a lot of different things in terms of the open field tackling and just that, even the tackle that he made on Tyquan Thornton after giving up the big play deep downfield where he was in great position. I mean, that was a touchdown, if not for him recovering and getting back up there and making that play. So you just see the effort from him. You see the progression from him as a player. And he's one of those guys that you just can depend on every single game. So Jaquan McMillian, game ball for the defense.
I like that. I'm going to give one defensive. I think to Justin Sternad, because even on that Jaquan interception, Justin's pursuit of Patrick Mahomes and him kind of getting his hands up there forced Mahomes to throw it maybe at a different trajectory, led to the interception. Obviously filling in for Alex Singleton. I thought that Denver responded really well. Got to see Alex after the game. He's in good spirits. Hopefully he'll be back sooner rather than later. I'm going to give Justin one here. Special teams, I'm going to give one that no one's even going to think of, even though I think he's probably the most deserving of it. I'm going to go with Frank Crum, baby. Frank Crum with the blocked PAT, because this game would have been 20-16 if Frank Crum didn't happen. Well, you know what? Crum happened, and the Broncos were able to go down and obviously tie this one up at 19-19. I'm giving the big guy one. And look, they tried him out a couple of weeks ago at this. His hops and his height it actually paid off here. And once again, an undrafted guy balling for the Broncos, Frank Crum. He gets a game ball from me.
Who tipped off?
Sometimes you have to be a little strategic, and big shout out to him, man, for being part of that unit and getting that big paw up there.
Yeah, who tipped off Darren Rizzi to the Brock Osweiler play? I didn't know anyone knew about that.
Remember, Brock didn't even jump on that one. They're like, "Oh yeah, Brock Osweiler, he's got 6'7" height. He's out." That was against the New England Patriots, I think, in that game where the Broncos blew the 24-0 lead. And they're like, Brock Osweiler, and he doesn't even jump. Well, Frank Crum, you know what? Frank's gonna jump, and just love the guy's work ethic. He is the eligible guy. He's become Alex Palczewski, but are we gonna see a pass to Frank Crum in the future? I don't know. We'll have to see.
You never know, right? Because Garrett Bowles got a target this season. So, I mean, at this point, anything is possible, right? And Frank is certainly very athletic. But look, on special teams, what about just Darren Rizzi getting a game ball? I mean, the guy has been absolutely getting shredded over the first handful of weeks of this season. Obviously, the first 2+ months of the season. Feels like the special teams has had one bad error each week after another, right? And so for this week, I mean, we talked about Will Lutz making clutch kicks, Jeremy Crawshaw pinning them deep, Marvin Mims, big returns, Devin Key making plays, Frank Crum blocking an extra point. I think Darren Rizzi has probably something to do with all that stuff. And the Broncos obviously made some business decisions with Trent Sherfield getting cut, and they moved on from the guy they signed from the Saints, right? So, I mean, obviously it's been a tough year for Rizzi in terms of what was expected and what we've seen, but this was the best game that we've seen from the special teams overall.
Well, I know Marvin Mims is definitely the 1A special teams guy, but if there's a 1B, you have to tip your cap and give this award to Will Lutz because, I mean, for a second there, no one was scoring any points, no touchdowns at least, and it was kind of like the best of kind of like the Pro Bowl, who can kick the furthest or most consistently, and Will Lutz won that battle. So for me, it's got to be Will Lutz to just kind of know, hey, listen, you got to have the nerves, understanding the last time you faced this team in Arrowhead, things did not end up the way that you wanted it to because it was similar situations. The Bronco had to move the ball down the field, and they moved it effectively when they hadn't all game long, only to set up this field goal. And you're like, yes, you know what? I'm going to get up and go fix me a piece of pie because I know this is money right here. Only to hear the announcer go, no, it's blocked. Now, in this edition, or as I say in the comic book world, 8th world, I guess I'll say Earth 32, the Broncos win this game, and it was all, I'm not going to say it's all because of Will Lutz. Let me back up for a second. Will Lutz had a lot to do with it.
Let's be honest here, honesty hour. I'm sure so many people watching will be able to chime in and answer their thoughts too. How many of you were a little anxious and holding your breath for that moment just because against the same team, very similar setup in this game? I'll admit, I didn't want to have my tweet pre-written like, hey, Broncos field goal is good, they win. I didn't want to put it out there beforehand. I didn't want to write it before the kick even happened. I didn't this time. Not saying that I'm the reason for it, but I held my breath and I was like, is it good? And I'm sure for Will Lutz, this was kind of like an exercising of the demons. How did you guys feel in that moment?
Twitter is like 20 seconds ahead of my TV broadcast, so I would be lying if I didn't say I looked at Twitter to make sure that he made that dang field goal before I saw it go in, because I was thinking the same thing. Although that game in Kansas City last year, they were down by 1 point, or they were up by, I don't remember what the situation was. They were down instead of tied, right? So they were down. So yeah, that was the whole thing there. It's like you make it, you win, but if you miss it, you lose. In this situation, it's like, well, at least you have the backup plan in place. But yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say I had that one spoiled before I saw it. So I was with you, Cody, on that.
Well, okay. I did, even though I wasn't kicking, I did the Steph Curry thing where Steph Curry just shoot the ball and just walk away. I just turned my back and I say, you know what? It's going to be what it's going to be, right? and I'll let the crowd determine what the end result. So when you hear that loud cheer, you know it was all good.
I'm going to give a little honorary game ball to like Jaleel McLaughlin. I think a lot of listeners were saying Jaleel. I highly deserve that. has been waiting for the opportunity. Big moment for him. I'm going to give one to Broncos country. Nick, you were there with me in the stadium. It was shaking in the press box. My water bottle was just rattling. Broncos country was so loud the entire game. They brought the heat. They brought the energy. I think we got to give one out there to Broncos country. I'd be remiss if we didn't do that. They brought that Mile High magic to the forefront. And as always, Broncos country, we appreciate you tuning into the Broncos Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Sayre Bedinger, Nick Ferguson, myself, and hopefully Neil Piero, he's feeling under the weather. We'll be back on Tuesday for another Broncos Squad Show as the Broncos enter the bye week. No bye week blues this time, but a lot to learn from the first half of the season and what the Broncos can do better in the second half. You'll get that on Tuesdays. Broncos Squad Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.